Today on February 19th, something was just reported in the spirit realm that you cannot afford to ignore. This is not an ordinary day. This is not a random date on a calendar. There are moments when heaven interrupts time, when unseen battles reach a turning point, and when a decision is made that shifts the course of someone's destiny. February 19th is one of those moments. A failed attack was just reported. Not a minor delay. Not a small disruption. A full, calculated attack, planned in secrecy, has collapsed. And the revelation that follows is even more shocking. Your name was removed from a dark agenda. For days, perhaps weeks, you have sensed something unusual. A pressure you could not explain. A tension in the atmosphere. A resistance that felt larger than circumstances. You may have wondered why certain things were stalling, why certain doors felt heavy, why your spirit felt alert as if preparing for something unseen. What you did not realize is that behind the scenes, a strategy had been formed. Your progress had drawn attention. Your calling had been marked. Your obedience had been noticed. And in response, an agenda was drafted in darkness with your name attached to it. But today, February 19th, a report came through the heavenly realm. The attack failed. This is not symbolic language. This is a spiritual reality. There was an assignment intended to cause delay, confusion, loss, or derailment. It was structured carefully. It was timed strategically. It was meant to strike when you were distracted, tired, or least expecting it. Yet before it could manifest fully, intervention took place. Archangel Michael stepped forward as a defender. A verdict was issued. A command was spoken. And your name was removed. Do you understand what that means? When a name is written into a dark agenda, it signifies targeting. It signifies intention. It signifies a coordinated effort designed to interrupt destiny. But when a name is removed, it signifies protection. It signifies authority. It signifies that someone higher has overridden the decision. The removal of your name was not accidental. It was deliberate. It was forceful. It was final. There are spiritual battles most people never see. Decisions are made in realms beyond physical sight. Strategies are formed long before events appear in the natural world. And sometimes, what feels like anxiety or unexplained heaviness is actually the ripple effect of a battle happening on your behalf. The reason you are listening to this right now is not coincidence. It is confirmation. February 19th marks the exposure of what was meant to stay hidden. A failed attack was just reported. That means it was real. It means it had momentum. It means it had structure. But it also means it had been dismantled. The collapse of this plan is not just about protection from harm. It is about preservation of purpose. There is something ahead of you that must not be interrupted. There is a door preparing to open that required this attack to fail. There is a promotion, a connection, an opportunity, or a revelation that demanded divine defense. Archangel Michael's confirmation is significant. When a battle escalates to the level where he steps in, it is because the stakes are high. He does not move without reason. He does not intervene without assignment. His involvement signals that what surrounds you carries weight. Your calling is not small. Your obedience is not unnoticed. Your spiritual positioning has activated attention in both realms, light and dark. But here is what makes today urgent. You must recognize the sign. Protection often comes quietly. Victory sometimes arrives without noise. A failed attack does not always leave visible evidence. Instead, it leaves subtle shifts. A sudden calm where there was chaos. A cancelled event that later reveals hidden danger. A delay that now feels like relief. A conversation that never happened but would have changed everything. These are not accidents. They are evidence. Today, February 19th, is the day the report surfaced. And when heaven releases a report, it is not for curiosity, it is for awareness. You are being alerted. You are being informed. You are being awakened to the reality that something tried to move against you and could not succeed. That knowledge changes how you walk forward. It changes how you interpret recent events. It changes how you view what did not happen. What if the disappointment you felt was actually protection? What if the frustration you experienced was actually shielding? What if the thing you thought was falling apart was being dismantled because it was part of the attack? A failed attack means the strategy collapsed before completion. It means the force behind it lost authority. It means the timing was disrupted. And most importantly, it means you are still positioned exactly where you are meant to be. This is why the title says, "Watch now to recognize the sign." Recognition is power. When you understand that a battle was fought and won on your behalf, gratitude replaces fear. Confidence replaces confusion. And clarity replaces doubt. Today is not random. February 19th stands as a marker, a dividing line. Before this day, an unseen threat was active. After this day, it has been neutralized. The report is clear. The attack failed. Your name was removed from a dark agenda. And what comes next will reveal why that removal was necessary. The story is not over. In fact, it is just beginning. The exposure of this failed attack is only the first layer of what heaven wants you to understand. There is more to uncover. There is more to recognize. And what you are about to learn will make sense of everything that has felt strange, heavy, or unexplained. This is the urgent report from February 19th. And it changes everything. There is a precise moment in every spiritual battle when the outcome shifts. It may not be visible in the natural world, but in the unseen realm, it is unmistakable. Today on February 19th, that moment was recorded. The attack that had been forming against you did not slowly fade away. It did not weaken over time. It collapsed. And when something collapses, it means its structure could no longer stand under the authority that confronted it. This was not random interference. The attack had been constructed carefully. Layers were built around it. Timing, circumstance, emotional pressure, and calculated distraction. It was designed to look natural, to appear as coincidence, to blend into everyday life so you would never recognize its true origin. The intention was to cause you to doubt yourself, to question your path, to second-guess decisions that were divinely inspired. The plan relied on confusion. It relied on discouragement. It relied on you stepping out of alignment long enough for damage to take root. But something unexpected happened. Before the final stage could unfold, heaven called an interruption. There is a realm where decisions are weighed, where motives are exposed, where hidden agendas are brought into the light. In that spiritual courtroom, your name was presented. The accusation was prepared. The strategy was outlined. But when the case was brought forward, it did not proceed as planned. Archangel Michael stepped into position. When he moves, he does not negotiate with darkness. He enforces decrees. His presence signals authority. His intervention signals that a boundary has been crossed. And in this moment, the boundary was clear. This attack would not be allowed to complete its assignment. The collapse was immediate because the authority behind it was greater than the force trying to execute it. You may have sensed the shift without understanding it. Perhaps you felt sudden relief without knowing why. Perhaps something that seemed inevitable suddenly stalled. Perhaps a conflict disarmed before it escalated. These were not coincidences. They were signs of the collapse happening in real time. The structure of the attack depended on momentum. They needed agreement. It needed timing. It needed you to react in a certain way. But when divine intervention entered, the momentum broke. The timing shattered. The agreement was revoked. And without those components, the entire strategy fell apart. This is why the report says a failed attack was just recorded. Failure in this context means it lost authorization. It means it could not legally proceed. It means your destiny carries protection that overrides hidden agendas. And here is what is powerful about this moment. The collapse did not just protect you from harm. It preserved something ahead of you that cannot be compromised. There are seasons when protection feels like restriction. There are moments when divine interruption feels inconvenient. But what if what felt like a setback was actually the very thing that caused the attack to fail? What if the delay you resisted was the shield you needed? The enemy's strategy often depends on speed, but heaven's strategy depends on timing. And timing was shifted in your favor. As you hear this, something inside you may be aligning. Pieces of recent events may be connecting. The sudden change of plans. The canceled opportunity. The conversation that never happened. The decision you almost made but didn't. Each of these moments may have been part of the collapse sequence. This is not just about surviving something negative. This is about stepping into a protected future. When an attack collapses, it leaves behind evidence. It leaves behind space. It leaves behind clarity. And now that your name has been removed from that dark agenda, the energy that was being directed against you has nowhere to land. That is why this message matters right now. Because awareness strengthens alignment. When you understand that you were defended, you move differently. You speak differently. You decide differently. Gratitude becomes your posture instead of fear. And if this revelation is speaking to your spirit, if something in you recognizes that a hidden battle was fought on your behalf, then take a moment to respond. Like this video as a declaration that you receive this protection. Share it with someone who has felt unexplained pressure or resistance. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss the alerts when spiritual reports like this are released. And comment below with the word protected to seal your agreement with what has been declared today. Your engagement is not just interaction, it is alignment. The moment the attack collapsed was not loud in the natural world, but it was decisive in the spirit. A structure fell. A plan dissolved. An agenda lost power. And Archangel Michael's intervention confirmed something vital. You are not walking alone. And you are not unguarded. February 19th will be remembered as the day the strategy failed. The day the accusation lost ground. The day the collapse created space for something greater to emerge. But this is only the surface of what happened. Because the removal of your name was not just about defense. It was about repositioning. And what happened when your name was identified and erased from that list reveals an even deeper layer of this story. There is something deeply personal about what happened in the spirit realm on February 19th. This was not a general announcement. It was not a wide, undefined warning. It was specific. Your name was identified. In the unseen realm, names carry authority. They represent identity, assignment, and destiny. When your name appears in any spiritual record, it signals intention. And before this attack failed, your name had been marked within a dark agenda that was designed to interfere with your progress. You must understand how this works. Dark agendas are not random storms. They are structured lists of targets, people whose growth, influence, or calling has become a threat to opposing forces. When you choose obedience over compromise, when you step forward despite fear, when you continue praying even when answers feel delayed, your spiritual presence becomes noticeable. Light draws attention. Alignment activates resistance. And that resistance often begins with identification. Your name was identified because your movement forward was real. The steps you have been taking recently were not small in the spiritual realm. The decision to stay faithful, a choice to forgive, the refusal to give up. These actions sent signals upward and outward. And with that signal came targeting. A dark agenda formed around the idea of slowing you down, confusing you, or causing you to misstep at a critical moment. But what they did not anticipate was the divine audit. On February 19th, before the strategy could unfold fully, there was a review. In the spiritual realm, nothing proceeds without being weighed. Intentions are examined. Permissions are evaluated. And when your name came under review, something shifted. The authority covering you was stronger than the accusation against you. The covenant over your life overruled the plan. The agenda was exposed before execution. Imagine a document being held in the shadows, your name written clearly across its surface. Now imagine a hand of authority crossing it out, not gently, not temporarily, but permanently. That is what happened. Your name was removed, erased from the list, detached from the outcome. What was meant to include you could no longer claim you. And when a name is removed, the atmosphere changes. You may have felt it without understanding it. A sudden calm replacing a quiet anxiety. A shift in your sleep. A sense that something heavy lifted even though nothing around you visibly changed. That is because removal creates release. The pressure attached to the agenda no longer had access to you. The energy assigned to disrupt you lost its target. Here is the first hidden sign you must recognize. Interruptions that protected you. Think back carefully. Was there a conversation that never happened but would have escalated into conflict? Was there an opportunity that closed unexpectedly but now feels like a blessing? Was there a delay that frustrated you at first but later revealed hidden risk? These were not random disappointments. They were evidence of removal. When your name was erased, the path connected to that agenda lost access to you. Another sign is unusual clarity. When a dark agenda loses its hold, confusion dissolves. You begin to see situations differently. You notice patterns you missed before. You sense direction where there was once fog. Clarity is often the echo of divine protection. You may also notice a subtle strengthening within you. Not loud confidence, but steady assurance. A quiet knowing that you are covered. That assurance is not imagination. It is confirmation that the battle shifted. But listen carefully. Recognition is critical. If you do not recognize the sign, you may misinterpret the protection. You might grieve what was actually a rescue. You might resent what was actually redirection. Awareness transforms your response. The removal of your name was not just about stopping harm. It was about preserving timing. There is something ahead that requires you whole, focused, and undistracted. If the agenda had succeeded, it would have drained your energy at the wrong moment. It would have shifted your attention away from what is about to unfold. But now, because your name has been removed, you are positioned correctly. And here is where it becomes even more powerful. Once a name is erased from a dark agenda by divine authority, it cannot simply be rewritten without consequence. The exposure itself becomes a shield. The failed attempt becomes a warning to opposing forces that your covering is active and enforced. If this is resonating with your spirit, pause for a moment and breathe in that truth. You were seen. You were defended. You were removed. This was not luck. It was intervention. Type "I am chosen" in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson code 349 is now activated. And as you reflect on this revelation, remember this: what you have heard so far is only the surface. The meaning of a failed attack carries implications that reach further into your future than you realize. The collapse was not only defensive, it was preparatory. Something is shifting because of this removal. Hold on, because what comes next will reveal why this failure was necessary for your elevation. The mission of exposing moments like February 19th is not about information. It is about illumination. When you sow into this work through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are not supporting a channel. You are fueling a river of light that reaches souls who feel unseen in their battles. Scripture declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And this is not distant history. This is God speaking directly into your obedience right now. I feel led to say this: I am stepping forward to help carry this message where it needs to go. Your giving becomes seed in fertile ground, unlocking protection, clarity, and breakthrough in lives you may never meet. Do not miss the holy urgency of this moment. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code may be flashing on your screen. Move as you feel prompted. As you release your seed, may open heavens respond over your household, and may multiplied harvest return to you swiftly. Act now and seal your obedience with action. When you hear the phrase "a failed attack," it is easy to focus only on the word attack. But in the spiritual realm, the most powerful word in that phrase is failed. Because failure implies an attempt was made, momentum was building, and yet the outcome did not align with the intention. Something intervened. Something overruled. Something stood in the gap and said, "No further." A failed attack is not the same as a delayed attack. Delaying means something is postponed and could still occur. Failure means the assignment lost its power. It means the structure behind it collapsed beyond recovery. And this distinction matters deeply for you right now. What was aimed at you on February 19th was not postponed for a later date. It was dismantled. In prophetic language, a failed attack is often a sign of elevation. Why? Because resistance intensifies when movement forward becomes significant. When you are approaching a threshold, opposition increases. When you are nearing a breakthrough, pressure often rises. It is not because you are weak. It is because you are close. Think about it carefully. If your path carried no impact, there would be no need for an agenda against you. If your obedience had no consequence, there would be no reason to interrupt it. The very existence of an attack signals value. The failure of that attack signals protection over that value. Many people misunderstand spiritual resistance. They assume that opposition means they are out of alignment. But often, resistance is confirmation that you are exactly where you need to be. The key is not whether an attack forms. The key is whether it succeeds. And in your case, it failed. A failed attack also reveals something about authority. In any conflict, the outcome is determined by which authority has the final word. The dark agenda may have had intention, but it did not have ultimate permission. Authority higher than the agenda intervened. That authority reviewed the strategy and revoked its access. When permission is withdrawn, power dissolves. This is why you may feel a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. Exhaustion, because a battle was forming around you. Relief, because it never fully reached you. Sometimes your spirit senses tension before your mind understands it. And when that tension suddenly lifts, You realize something was happening beneath the surface. There is also another dimension to a failed attack: redirection. When something collapses before completion, it often clears space. The path that would have been blocked becomes open. The energy that would have been drained becomes available. The distraction that would have consumed your focus disappears. Consider what has shifted recently. Has something ended abruptly? Has a situation that seemed intense suddenly quieted? Has a door closed that once felt urgent? Instead of seeing these as losses, begin to interpret them as evidence. The failed attack did not only stop harm, it rearranged your path. In prophetic understanding, failure of the enemy signals activation of assignment. It is like a signal flare in the spirit realm declaring that your journey carries weight. When opposition collapses, it often means you are stepping into a higher level of responsibility. Protection increases because purpose increases. You are not just protected from something negative. You are being preserved for something significant. There is a difference between spiritual backlash and spiritual breakthrough. Backlash drains you. Breakthrough strengthens you. Backlash creates confusion. Breakthrough creates clarity. The moment the attack failed, backlash lost its grip and breakthrough began its rise. This does not mean challenges will never appear again. It means this specific assignment against you has been neutralized. It means the timing connected to it has been interrupted permanently. It means the momentum it depended on has scattered. And here is something powerful to understand. When an attack fails publicly in the spirit realm, it sends a message. It declares that the covering over your life is active. It signals that interference will not go unchallenged. It establishes a boundary. You may not have seen the battle, but the result is visible in your continued position. You are still standing. You are still moving forward. You are still aligned. That is not small. That is evidence. A failed attack also invites reflection. Not fear, but awareness. It invites you to walk with greater discernment, to recognize that what appears sudden may have roots in unseen planning, to understand that protection is not passive, it is intentional. February 19th becomes a marker not of danger, but of victory, not of dread, but of triumph, not of vulnerability, but of validation. The agenda formed. The nay was written. The strategy was prepared. And yet, the ending was rewritten. Failure in the enemy's camp means advancement in yours. As you move forward from this day, carry this understanding. You were considered worth targeting. You were considered influential enough to interrupt. And yet you were covered enough to remain untouched. That combination reveals something profound about your calling. And what that calling truly represents will become even clearer as we uncover the deeper layers of the dark agenda itself and why it focused on you in the first place. To fully understand what happened on February 19th, you must understand what a dark agenda truly is. This phrase is not grammatic language. It describes a coordinated spiritual strategy designed to interfere with destiny. A dark agenda is not random misfortune. It is not everyday difficulty. It is a deliberate plan formed in secrecy with a specific outcome in mind. And in your case, that outcome involved interruption. Dark agendas are built in layers. First, there is observation. Your movements are watched. Your growth is monitored. The changes in your mindset, your discipline, your prayer life, your decisions, these are noted. When you begin shifting from survival mode into purpose mode, attention increases. When you break patterns that once held you back, resistance rises. When you refuse to repeat cycles that once trapped you, something in the unseen realm reacts. Second, there is assessment. The agenda examines where you might be vulnerable. Is there an old fear that can be triggered? Is there a relationship that can be strained? Is there a financial pressure that can be amplified? The strategy does not always aim for dramatic destruction. Sometimes it aims for subtle derailment, a small distraction at the wrong moment, a misunderstanding at a critical time, a discouraging thought planted when you are tired. Third, there is timing. Dark agendas rely heavily on precision. They wait for moments when your guard is lowered, when you are celebrating progress, when you are stepping into something new. Because transitions are powerful and vulnerable, the enemy often tries to strike, not when you are falling, but when you are rising. And this is where you come into focus. The reason your name appeared on such an agenda is not because you were weak. It is because you were advancing. Something about your recent movement signaled that a shift was happening. Perhaps you have been feeling more clarity than before. Perhaps you have been distancing yourself from old habits. Perhaps you have been sensing that a new season is near. A shift created attention. But here is the truth that changes everything. Agendas built in darkness depend on secrecy. They depend on remaining hidden. They depend on you being unaware. The moment exposure happens, their power weakens. And on February 19th, exposure occurred. The dark agenda that carried your name was uncovered before execution. Its timing was disrupted. Its structure was challenged. Its intention was overruled. What was meant to be subtle became visible. What was meant to be silent was reported. This is why you may have felt unusual spiritual intensity leading up to this moment. You may have sensed emotional fluctuations that did not match your circumstances. You may have experienced sudden doubts that felt foreign. These were early waves of a forming strategy. But once your name was removed, those waves began to lose force. Another important truth about dark agendas is this: they often attempt to distort identity. If destruction cannot succeed, confusion is introduced. If confusion cannot take root, delay is attempted. The goal is always the same: to separate you from clarity about who you are and where you are going. But removal from the agenda did more than protect you from harm. It restored alignment. When your name was erased, the distortion lost access. The pressure designed to make you question yourself weakened. The subtle whispers of doubt lost their source of reinforcement. Now look back carefully. Have you noticed certain thought patterns fading? Have you sensed renewed focus? Have you felt less reactive and more steady? These are not random improvements. They are after effects of exposure. A dark agenda thrives in hidden corners. It grows in silence. It spreads through misinterpretation. But once light enters, structure dissolves. And that is exactly what happened. There is also something else you must understand. Not everyone becomes the focus of a coordinated agenda. May live unnoticed because they pose no disruption to darkness. But when your obedience begins influencing others, when your strength becomes encouragement for someone else, your presence carries impact. Impact draws resistance, but impact also draws protection. The fact that your name was removed signals something powerful. Your destiny is guarded. There is purpose ahead that cannot afford contamination. There is timing ahead that cannot afford confusion. There is progress ahead that cannot afford interruption. And here is the deeper layer. Sometimes, exposure of an agenda is itself preparation for promotion. When an attack fails publicly in the spirit realm, it often means authority over that territory is shifting. It means the very ground that was contested becomes part of your testimony. It means what was meant to weaken you becomes evidence of your covering. The dark agenda explained is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken you. Awareness strengthens discernment. Discernment strengthens confidence. Confidence strengthens movement. February 19th marked exposure and removal. But it also marked transition. Because when something formed against you collapses, space is created. And that space does not remain empty for long. Something new begins to form. And to understand why Archangel Michael stepped into this battle at this exact moment, we must look deeper into his role and what his intervention signifies about what surrounds you now. To understand the magnitude of what happened on February 19th, you must understand who stepped into the battle. Archangel Michael is not assigned to minor disturbances. His presence signals high-level spiritual conflict. When his name is connected to an event, it indicates that what was unfolding carried significant weight. His role is not symbolic. It is authoritative. He stands as a defender, a guardian, and an enforcer of divine decrees. Throughout spiritual history, Michael is recognized as a warrior assigned to protect purpose and confront forces that attempt to overstep their boundaries. He does not operate in confusion. He does not respond emotionally. He acts with clarity and precision. When a strategy forms that threatens destiny on a larger scale, his involvement becomes necessary. This is why February 19th was not an ordinary intervention. The attack forming against you and crossed a line. It was not simply about inconvenience or distraction. It was aiming at alignment. It was targeting timing. It was attempting to interfere with something that carries long-term consequence. And when that threshold was reached, Michael stepped forward. Imagine the moment. The agenda laid out. The accusation structure. The strategy ready for execution. But before activation, authority entered the scene. Michael's role in that moment was not to negotiate. It was to enforce what had already been declared over your life. Protection was not invented that day. It was activated. There is something powerful about enforcement. A decree can exist, but until it is enforced, opposition may attempt to test its limits. Michael's presence signaled that the covering over you was not passive. It was active. It was guarded. It was backed by strength that does not hesitate. When he steps into a battle, he does so with the understanding that destiny is at stake. And destiny is not random. It is designed. It is intentional. It is layered with impact beyond what you currently see. That is why interference at certain stages triggers higher levels of defense. You may wonder why such protection would surround you. The answer is not about perfection. It is about purpose. Protection does not come because you are flawless. It comes because your assignment matters. The direction you are moving holds influence. The decisions you are making ripple outward. And the growth you are experiencing is connected to more than just your own life. Michael's role in this battle also reveals timing. He stepped in before the attack could fully manifest. This detail is critical. It means intervention occurred at the strategic point of maximum prevention. Not after damage. Not during collapse. Before execution. That kind of timing reflects foresight. It reflects oversight. It reflects careful guarding of your path. There is also symbolism in his intervention. Michael is often associated with the image of a sword, not as decoration, but as representation of decisive authority. A sword does not argue. It separates. It divides truth from deception. It cuts through confusion. When he intervened, he did not gradually weaken the agenda. He severed it. And that severing is why you are experiencing relief instead of recovery. You are not rebuilding from ruin. You are moving forward from protection. There is a difference. Recovery requires restoration after loss. Protection preserves you from loss in the first place. And what happened on February 19th was preservation. Consider what that says about the road ahead. If such defense was necessary now, what is coming must be significant. If such authority was activated, what you are approaching must carry weight. Protection often increases before expansion. Guarding intensifies before growth. Intervention heightens before elevation. Michael's involvement also sends a message into the unseen realm. It establishes boundaries. It signals that interference will not proceed unchecked, and marks territory as guarded. And when territory is marked, attempts to revisit it carry consequence. This does not mean you will never face resistance again. It means this specific assignment has been closed. The strategy connected to your name has been dismantled. The permission behind it has been revoked. An enforcement has made that clear. You may have felt isolated during recent tension. You may have felt like you were carrying pressure alone. But the involvement of Archangel Michael reveals something profound. You were never alone in the battle. Defense was active even when you were unaware of the threat. And here is the deeper implication. When a warrior of his level intervenes, it often signals that the individual being defended is stepping into a greater dimension of responsibility. The grayer the assignment, the stronger the go. February 19th was not just about stopping something negative. It was about confirming something powerful. It was a declaration that your movement forward is being watched, supported, and defended at levels you cannot always see. And as we continue, the signs confirming that your name has truly been removed and that this shift is permanent are becoming clearer. The evidence is already appearing in subtle ways around you. When a name is removed from a dark agenda, the evidence does not always arrive with noise. There is no public announcement in the natural world. There is no visible document to examine. Instead, the confirmation appears in signs, subtle but undeniable shifts that reveal something has changed. February 19th marked the removal, but the days surrounding it carry the proof. One of the first signs is interruption that works in your favor. Think carefully about recent events. Was there something that subtly stopped progressing? A plan that dissolved without explanation? A connection that quietly faded? At first, it may have looked like loss. But now, in light of what you know, consider this: that interruption may have been the very evidence that your name was erased. When an agenda loses access to you, the pathways connected to it begin to collapse. Another sign is unexpected peace replacing pressure. Before removal, you may have sensed tension that had no clear source. A heaviness in your thoughts. A heightened sensitivity to small conflicts. A feeling that something was about to shift, but not knowing whether it would be positive or negative. After removal, that invisible weight begins to lift. You may not have noticed the exact moment it changed, but suddenly you are breathing easier. The urgency has softened. The background noise has quieted. Peace is often the echo of protection. Here is also the sign of closed doors that no longer feel disappointing. A door that once seemed essential may have shut, but instead of devastation, you now feel neutrality, or even relief. That is not emotional numbness. That is alignment. When your name was attached to an agenda, certain doors were positioned to redirect you into distraction. Once the removal occurred, those doors lost relevance. Their closure became confirmation. Dream patterns may have shifted as well. Perhaps your sleep has become more stable. Perhaps the unsettling imagery that once visited your nights has decreased. Or perhaps clarity has entered your dreams in a way that feels reassuring. The subconscious often reflects spiritual activity. When conflict decreases, rest improves. You may also notice sharper discernment. Conversations that once confused you now seem transparent. Motives are easier to detect. Decisions feel clearer. Discernment is a protective gift that often strengthens after exposure. Because once you understand that a strategy formed against you, your awareness sharpens. You begin to notice patterns you overlooked before. Another sign is restored focus. Before February 19th, distractions may have multiplied. Small tasks felt overwhelming. Your concentration fractured easily. But now, there is a steadying effect. Your thoughts align more quickly. Your goals feel reachable again. That is because the agenda that sought to scatter your attention no longer holds power. Relationships may also reflect the shift. Tension that seemed to rise suddenly may now be dissolving. Misunderstandings are clearing without dramatic confrontation. Or in some cases, unhealthy connections are distancing naturally. Removal from a dark agenda does not just affect you, it adjusts the atmosphere around you. Financial or practical matters may show subtle improvement as well. Not necessarily dramatic increase, but stabilization. Delays that felt threatening now appear manageable. Resources stretch further. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. When an attack fails, it often releases what was being withheld. It is important that you recognize these signs not as coincidence, but as confirmation. When you interpret them correctly, gratitude replaces frustration. Confidence replaces doubt. Instead of asking, "Why did that happen?" you begin to declare, "That protected me." There is another sign that is deeply personal: renewed spiritual hunger. When the pressure of an agenda lifts, your desire for clarity increases. You feel drawn toward truth. You sense a stronger pull toward alignment. This is not random inspiration. It is recalibration. The removal cleared space, and that space is now being filled with strength. You might also feel courage returning. Decisions that once felt risky now feel possible. Conversations you avoided now feel manageable. Steps you delayed now feel urgent in a positive way. Courage is often restored after protection is confirmed. But here is something crucial. Recognition determines response. If you fail to recognize these signs, you may continue interpreting them as ordinary life events. And if you interpret protection as coincidence, you miss the opportunity to step fully into confidence. Look around you with new awareness. Review the past few days through this lens. What ended? What shifted? What lightened? What redirected? These are not fragments of randomness. They are threads of evidence woven together. February 19th was not just a date of removal. It was a pivot point. And the signs that follow are proof that the pivot was real. The atmosphere around you has adjusted. The pressure has decreased. The alignment has strengthened. And as you begin to recognize these confirmations, you will realize something even deeper. This shift is preparing you for what comes next. Because removal is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new level. February 19th was not only the day a failed attack was reported. It was the day the atmosphere around you shifted. When a dark agenda collapses and your name is removed, the spiritual climate does not remain the same. Something recalibrates. Something repositions. Something releases. And whether you fully understood it or not, you stepped into a different current after that moment. You may have woken up feeling slightly lighter without knowing why. Not dramatically different. Not overwhelmed with emotion. Just lighter. As if a background weight that had been pressing against your thoughts was suddenly absent. That subtle lightness is not imagination. It is the lifting of pressure that no longer has permission to remain. Before February 19th, There may have been a tension surrounding your next steps, a quiet hesitation, a subtle resistance that made even simple decisions feel heavier than they should have. That tension was connected to the farming agenda. It was trying to create instability before advancement. But when the attack failed, the instability dissolved. Now there is room to breathe. Spiritual shifts often manifest as clarity. Have you noticed your thoughts becoming more organized? Have ideas that once felt scattered begun to align? When pressure lifts, mental fog clears. When interference is removed, direction sharpens. The shift after February 19th is not just emotional relief. It is strategic clarity. You may also sense renewed energy. Not necessarily physical strength, but internal momentum. A desire to move forward instead of withdraw. A readiness to address things you had postponed. That readiness signals that your path is no longer being crowded by unseen resistance. There is also a shift in perception. Situations that once seemed threatening now appear manageable. Challenges that felt overwhelming now seem temporary. This change is not denial. It is perspective restored. When an agenda is active, it magnifies obstacles. When it collapses, obstacles return to their true size. Another layer of this shift is restoration. Sometimes, when an attack is forming, it quietly drains resources, time, attention, emotional capacity. After removal, those resources begin returning. You may find yourself reconnecting with joy, laughing more easily, feeling gratitude more naturally. These are signs of restoration in motion. But here is something even deeper. Protection often precedes promotion. The shift you are experiencing is not simply about what ended. It is about what is beginning. When your name was erased from the dark list, space was created for something new to be written in its place. You are entering a season of alignment. Alignment means your steps and your timing begin to synchronize. Conversations line up at the right moment. Opportunities appear when you are ready. Insights arrive when needed. The chaos that once disrupted flow begins to calm. And when alignment increases, progress accelerates. Yet this is also a sensitive period. After a battle ends, there is a moment of adjustment. You may feel reflective. You may find yourself reviewing recent events with new understanding. Allow that process. Reflection strengthens awareness. Awareness strengthens preparation. Because what follows a failed attack is often expansion. The shift after February 19th signals that you have crossed a threshold. The very fact that intervention was required reveals that your next chapter carries significance. The lifting of pressure is not the conclusion. It is the clearing before construction. You may notice doors opening quietly, a message arriving at the right time, an idea forming with clarity, a connection reappearing unexpectedly. These are not random occurrences. They are signs that movement has resumed without obstruction. At the same time, remain attentive, not fearful but aware. Recognize the difference between genuine opportunity and distraction. The failed attack does not mean challenges disappear forever. It means this specific strategy has ended. Your discernment now becomes part of your protection. There is something powerful about surviving a battle you did not even fully see. It builds quiet confidence. It reminds you that you are covered even when unaware. It strengthens your trust in timing. And here is what you must not overlook. This shift is permanent. The agenda tied to your name has been dismantled. The access it once attempted to claim has been revoked. The atmosphere around your assignment hath been guarded. Type shifted in the comments if you feel this change within you. Lesson code 582 is now activated. As you step into this lighter atmosphere, Hold this awareness close. The removal was not random. The protection was not accidental. And the clarity you are beginning to feel is only the first wave of what is unfolding. You'll be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed, because the way you respond to this protection will determine how powerfully you step into what comes next. This moment of shift is not only personal, it is part of a larger movement of light breaking through hidden battles. When you sow into this mission through super thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are pouring oil into a lamp that refuses to go out. The word declares that when you give, it is pressed down, shaken together, and running over, and this promise is alive and speaking over you now. I sense this invitation clearly. I am responding to this shift by helping others see their protection too. Your seed becomes a river that carries hope to someone standing on the edge of discouragement. Do not let this prophetic moment pass without action. The PayPal link waits in the description, and the QR code on your screen is an open door. Step through it in obedience. As you release your gift, may restoration flood your household and may divine increase locate you swiftly. Move now and seal this shift with faithful action. Now that you understand what happened on February 19th, now that you recognize that a failed attack was just reported and your name was removed from a dark agenda, the question becomes personal. How will you respond to divine protection? Protection is not only something to receive, it is something to honor. When heaven intervenes, when a strategy collapses before it reaches you, when your name is erased from something designed to harm you, the appropriate response is alignment. Gratitude is not a polite reaction. It is spiritual power. Gratitude seals protection. Gratitude strengthens awareness. Gratitude keeps your heart positioned correctly for what comes next. You could have been distracted right now. You could have been overwhelmed by circumstances. You could have been recovering from something that drained you completely. But instead, you are standing in preserved timing. That preservation deserves recognition. The first response is acknowledgement. Speak it. Declare it. Even if you did not see the battle, acknowledge that it was fought. Even if you did not feel the exact moment of removal, recognize that it happened. When you acknowledge protection, you activate confidence. Fear loses its grip when you realize something tried and failed. The second response is guarding your thoughts. After an attack fails, sometimes lingering whispers attempt to create doubt. What if it wasn't really removed? What if something else forms? Those thoughts are echoes of a defeated strategy. Do not entertain them. The report was clear. The collapse was decisive. Your name was removed. Guard your mind as fiercely as heaven guarded your destiny. The third response is alignment in speech. Words shape atmosphere. When you speak from fear, you recreate tension. When you speak from gratitude, you reinforce peace. Begin declaring protection over your steps. Begin affirming clarity over confusion. Begin speaking life over your path. The shift after February 19th is strengthened by what you say next. Another powerful response is testimony. Not every detail needs to be shared publicly, but acknowledging what you sense has changed strengthens your faith. When you tell someone, "I feel like something heavy lifted," you are giving language to protection. When you say, "I think I was saved from something," you are recognizing divine intervention. And this is where your engagement becomes meaningful. If this message resonates with you, if you sense that something indeed shifted around February 19th, do not remain silent. Like this video as an act of agreement. Share it with someone who has felt unexplained pressure or who may be standing at the edge of breakthrough. Subscribe to this channel so you remain connected to these spiritual alerts and confirmations. and comment the word aligned below as a declaration that you are responding intentionally to divine protection. Your engagement is not routine interaction. It is a public agreement with what has been revealed. There is also a deeper response required: obedience. Protection preserves you for purpose. Now that interference has been removed, movement must resume. Is there a step you delayed because something felt off? Is there a decision you postponed because clarity was clouded? Revisited. With the agenda dismantled, your path may now be open. But move wisely, not impulsively. Protection does not mean recklessness. It means readiness. Discernment should guide your steps. Peace should confirm your timing. Confidence should replace hesitation. You may also feel an increase in responsibility. When protection is confirmed, awareness increases. You realize you are covered for a reason. That reason involves influence. Influence may not always look public. It may simply mean your stability affects someone else's courage. Your clarity may strengthen someone else's faith. Your breakthrough may unlock someone else's hope. Do not minimize the significance of what happened. The removal of your name was not minor. It was strategic. It was deliberate. It was necessary. Another response is renewed devotion. When you realize you were defended without fully seeing the battle, humility rises. Gratitude deepens. Connection strengthens. Protection often draws you closer to the source of that protection. But here is something critical. Do not return to old patterns out of habit. Sometimes when pressure lifts, people unconsciously re-enter environments or mindsets that once made them vulnerable. Resist that pull. You have crossed the threshold. Stay aligned with the clarity that now surrounds you. February 19th was not only about stopping something negative. It was about repositioning you for something positive. Your response determines how fully you step into that repositioning. And as you move forward, remember this: protection is confirmation of purpose. The battle was intense because your future carries weight. The intervention was decisive because your next chapter matters. What comes next will not only validate this protection, it will reveal why the attack had to fail when it did. There is something most people do not realize about spiritual attacks. Sometimes they are evidence of impending promotion. Not every challenge signals elevation, but when a calculated agenda forms and then fails under divine authority, it often means you were standing at the edge of something greater than you understood. February 19th was not just the day an attack collapsed. It was the day your preservation cleared the path for promotion. Promotion in the spiritual sense is not always about public recognition. It is about increased responsibility, expanded influence, deeper authority, and clear alignment. It is about being trusted with more because you have proven faithful with less. And often, right before that expansion occurs, resistance intensifies. Why? Because elevation changes territory. If you step into a higher level of clarity, your decisions affect more people. If you step into stronger confidence, your voice carries more weight. If you step into a greater assignment, your obedience disrupts more darkness. A disruption invites resistance. But when resistance fails, it confirms that the promotion is authorized. Think about it. If the attack had succeeded, it would have drained you emotionally. It would have distracted you mentally. It would have misaligned you spiritually. You would have entered your next season weakened instead of strengthened. But because it failed, you are stepping forward whole. That is not accidental. That is preparation. Here is a spiritual law that often operates quietly. Resistance precedes release. When you feel pressure increasing without clear explanation, it may be because something is about to open. The pressure attempts to exhaust you before you cross the threshold. But when you endure, when you remain aligned, and when protection intervenes, release follows. The failed attack was not just about stopping harm. It was about ensuring you cross the threshold intact. Consider what may be ahead. Perhaps new opportunities are forming. Perhaps conversations are aligning. Perhaps insight is deepening. Perhaps a door you thought was closed permanently is preparing to open differently than before. Promotion rarely announces itself loudly at first. It begins with subtle shifts. You may notice increased confidence in areas where you once hesitated. You may sense a stronger sense of direction. You may feel drawn toward decisions you previously avoided. These are indicators that something within you has matured. Promotion also involves authority. When an agenda forms against you and fails, you gain awareness. Awareness strengthens discernment. Discernment strengthens authority. You are less easily shaken because you have seen what could have happened and did not. There is power in surviving what was meant to stop you. But understand this clearly. Promotion is not automatic comfort. It is increased capacity. It requires growth. It demands responsibility. When you step into higher levels, you must guard your mindset more carefully. You must protect your peace intentionally. You must remain aligned consistently. The attack that failed may have targeted your focus because your focus is key to what is next. It may have targeted your confidence because confidence is required where you are headed. It may have targeted your relationships because alignment in relationships will matter deeply in the next season. When something tries to weaken your strength and fails, your strength becomes more defined. There is also another layer to promotion hidden in this moment. Exposure creates testimony. Testimony builds credibility. When you speak from a place of preserved protection, your voice carries weight. Others sense authenticity. They sense resilience. They sense authority earned through unseen battles. February 19th was a pivot point. Before that date, interference was attempting to form. After the date, interference lost its footing. That pivot positions you differently. You may begin noticing doors that once required effort now responding more smoothly. You may find that conversations carry unexpected favor. You may sense alignment in areas that once felt chaotic. These are early indicators of elevation. Do not rush it. Promotion unfolds in layers. The first layer is internal. Confidence strengthens. Peace stabilizes. Clarity sharpens. The second layer is relational. Connections align. Conversations shift. Influence expands. The third layer is external. Opportunities appear. Platforms open. Responsibilities increase. The failed attack ensured that these layers would unfold without contamination. You are not being promoted because you avoided struggle. You are being positioned because you remained aligned under pressure. And protection confirmed that alignment. There is something deeply significant about the timing. If the agenda had been allowed to unfold fully, it could have delayed this elevation. But the collapse accelerated your path. What was meant to slow you down has actually moved you forward. That is the paradox of divine protection. What was intended for derailment becomes preparation. What was intended for confusion becomes clarity. What was intended for defeat becomes definition. And as you stand at this threshold, one thing becomes clear. The promotion hidden inside the attack is only fully understood when you recognize the sign that confirms it. That sign is closer than you think. There is always a sign. When heaven intervenes, when a failed attack is reported, when your name is removed from a dark agenda, a sign follows. Not to entertain you, not to oppress you, What to confirm alignment? February 19th with the shift. But the sign that proves it is unfolding right now around you. The challenge is this: signs are rarely dramatic. They are often subtle, easily dismissed, and quietly powerful. If you are expecting thunder, you may miss the whisper. If you are looking for spectacle, you may overlook the shift happening in your everyday life. The first sign you must recognize is peace that does not make logical sense. Peace that exists even though circumstances have not fully changed. Peace that remains steady when you think it should waver. That kind of peace is not denial. It is confirmation. It is evidence that something in the unseen realm has settled. Before February 19th, you may have felt an undercurrent of tension. Even when things looked fine on the surface, there was a subtle unease. That unease was connected to forming interference. Now, even if challenges remain, the undercurrent feels different. There is steadiness where there was instability. That steadiness is a sign. The second sign is unexpected favor in small details. A delayed response suddenly arrives. A conversation that could have turned negative shifts positively. A door that seemed locked opens slightly. These moments may appear minor, but they are indicators of alignment restored. When your name was removed from that agenda, resistance lost its legal hold. Favor begins to move more freely. The third sign is clarity about something you were confused about before. Perhaps a decision that once felt complicated now feels obvious. Perhaps a relationship that once seemed uncertain now reveals its true nature. Clarity is one of the strongest confirmations of protection. Confusion thrives under interference. When interference collapses, clarity returns. There is also a sign within you, a strengthening of resolve, a quiet boldness. You may feel less afraid to speak up, less hesitant to move forward, less attached to outcomes that once consumed you. That shift in internal posture is not coincidence. It is the result of knowing, deep down, that you were defended. Another sign to recognize is detachment from what once felt urgent. Sometimes when an attack is forming, it magnifies urgency around the wrong things. It makes distractions appear critical. It makes temporary matters feel permanent. After removal, those same things lose their emotional grip. What once seemed essential now feels optional. A detachment is protection revealed. You may also notice a renewed hunger for growth, a desire to refine your habits, a pull toward discipline, a sense that you want to steward this next season carefully. That desire is not pressure, it is preparation. When promotion approaches, your spirit senses responsibility. But here is where discernment becomes critical. Not every open door is a sign of alignment. Not every closed door is protection. The sign you must recognize carries peace. It carries clarity. It carries consistency. It does not rush you into chaos. It does not pressure you into confusion. It confirms, rather than confuses. Look back over the last few days. What changed unexpectedly? What resolved quietly? What pressure decreased? What opportunity appeared? What conversation felt divinely timed? These are not fragments of coincidence. They are pieces of a pattern. And there is one more sign that is deeply personal: timing. Have you noticed that this message arrived exactly when you needed it? That you found this confirmation at a moment when you were reflecting on recent shifts? That awareness itself is a sign. Recognition comes at the right moment for a reason. Do not ignore subtle confirmation because it lacks drama. Often, the most powerful signs are the ones that feel natural. They do not demand attention. They invite awareness. If you dismiss the sign, you risk misinterpreting the season. You might attribute protection to luck. You might see favor as random. You might overlook the significance of February 19th entirely. But if you recognize the sign, everything aligns differently. Gratitude deepens. Confidence strengthens. Movement becomes intentional. This is not about superstition. It is about spiritual awareness. When you know something tried to move against you and failed, you become more attentive to what confirms that failure. The sign you must recognize is already present. It is in the calm where chaos could have been. It is in the clarity where confusion once lingered. It is in the open path where obstruction was forming. And when you recognize it fully, you will realize that the failed attack was not just an ending. It was a beginning. The final confirmation of this message carries assurance that what surrounds you now is not vulnerability, but victory. Today, on February 19th, a failed attack was just reported. That statement alone carries weight. But now, after walking through every layer of this revelation, you can see the full picture. This was not a random spiritual disturbance. This was not coincidence. Your name was identified, targeted, and then deliberately removed from a dark agenda. Intervention took place. Authority stepped in. The strategy collapsed. And you are standing in preserved timing because of it. Let this settle in your spirit. You were defended before damage could occur. You were covered before confusion could take root. You were preserved before distraction could derail you. That is not small. That is not ordinary. That is intentional protection surrounding a purposeful life. February 19th will stand as a marker in your journey. A line between what was forming and what was dismantled. A dividing point between interference and alignment. The failed attack was not only about stopping something negative. It was about confirming something powerful. Your path is guarded. Archangel Michael's intervention was not symbolic comfort. It was enforcement. It was a declaration in the unseen realm that what concerns you concerns heaven. That your assignment is not overlooked. That your obedience is not unnoticed. That your movement forward is being defended at levels you may never fully see. And now, the atmosphere around you has shifted. The pressure that once hovered quietly has lifted. The subtle confusion that tried to cloud your thinking has cleared. The tension that attempted to slow you down has dissolved. You are not walking under threat. You are walking under confirmation. This is your final assurance. What failed will not return in the same form. The agenda connected to your name has been exposed and dismantled. The access it once attempted to claim hath been revoked. The strategy has lost authorization. That does not mean life will never bring challenges. It means this specific interference has ended. And because it ended before execution, you move forward without the scars it intended to create. There is peace available to you now. Not temporary relief, but steady peace. The kind that anchors you when circumstances fluctuate. The kind that reminds you that unseen battles can be won without your awareness. The kind that strengthens trust. As you step into what comes next, carry this confidence. Protection surrounds purpose. You are not guarded because you are perfect. You are guarded because your life carries impact. Your words carry influence. Your decisions ripple outward in ways you may not fully realize. The failed attack confirms your value. And now, you enter a new season with awareness. Awareness that you are seen. Awareness that you are covered. Awareness that intervention can occur before destruction ever touches your path. Do not walk timidly after this. Walk wisely, but confidently. Do not shrink back into hesitation. Move forward with discernment, but without fear. You have evidence now. Evidence that what forms against you can fail. Evidence that your name can be erased from what was meant to harm you. Today is not a warning. It is a confirmation. And as this message closes, let gratitude rise. Gratitude strengthens protection. Gratitude seals alignment. Gratitude keeps your heart steady in seasons of growth. Type "Victory is mine" in the comments as a declaration that you receive this confirmation. Blessing code 914 is now activated. May peace guard your thoughts. May clarity guide your decisions. May strength anchor your steps. And may every future attempt to interfere with your destiny be met with the same decisive authority that moved on February 19th. You are not vulnerable. You are covered. You are not targeted for defeat. You are positioned for purpose. You are not standing at the edge of loss. You are standing at the beginning of elevation. The report was clear. The attack failed. Your name was removed. And what comes next will unfold under protection. Walk forward in assurance. The battle you never saw has already been won. This final confirmation is not just revelation. It is activation. When you sow into this mission through super thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are planting seed into soil that carries prophetic impact. The word declares that as you give, heaven responds, and that promise is breathing over you right now. I hear this stirring clearly. I will not let this moment pass without strengthening the spread of this light. Your gift becomes oil that keeps this message burning for souls who are still fighting unseen battles. Do not hesitate in holy moments like this. The PayPal link is waiting in the description, and the QR code on your screen is an open door of obedience. Step through it now. As you release your seed, may divine protection multiply around your household and may unexpected favor pursue you. Act in faith and seal this victory with action.